However, when this administration believes that they don't want us to know which way they're going, it doesn't mean that they don't have a plan on the inside. It doesn't mean
sometimes when you listen to these people, these MAGA people, when you listen to the way these people are so arrogant, the way they speak about other countries, you attack somebody first. You wake up one morning after you've been negotiating with somebody to have something done, and then from nowhere you strike that person, and then after striking that person, you expect that person to just fold their arms and sit and say, yes, you are bigger than me, you are stronger than me. And then it's so annoying when you see them try to defend the indefensible. You guys have been bombarding Iran. You guys have killed children, kids. You guys have killed the leader. And then you guys are telling us that it's not a war. It's just a strike. So if it's not a war, then it's murder. Then it's a crime. But if it is a war, then Iran has all right to defend itself. And the way they sit on these studios and speak, sometimes I just wish that the same thing that they are doing to another country will one day come back to haunt them, because it will. And the sad part is, it's not going to only harm Americans. It's going to harm all of us, because prices are going to skyrocket. Before we know it, it's going to tough on our paychecks. So if you're in support of this, know that it's coming to haunt your ass. It's coming to you. Just listen to these guys. Listen to them and use your brain just a little bit and tell me what you think in the comment section. By the way, I am the uncle from Africa. I forgot my, I forgot the colors, but we still have to keep talking. We still have to keep, because this world belongs to all of us, and we only have one chance to live in this world. Anyway, people, make sure you smash the subscribe button, comment, and tell me how long you think this war is going to take. Who is going to win? Is America right to attack Iran? And for what reason? Because as of now, we don't know why they attack Iran. Because they've given us like 10 different reasons why they attack Iran. And every time they're changing. Anyway, watch this video with these crazy MAGA supporters and tell me what you think. And also don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and come back for another video. This is DB Unfiltered. My name is Dewey Banaki.
that they don't know their goals. It means that they don't want you to know where it's going.
But can I ask you, what would be the point?
I'm skeptical.
Yeah, what would be the, I just, but no. But hold on, I just want to understand, what would be the, what would be the point?
They have no idea what they're doing. There's no 4D chess.
Hold on, Jeff. Let me just ask you a follow-up.
I don't think it's 4D chess.
What would be the point at this stage? We're in the middle of bombing them into smithereens. What would be the point of sending contradictory messages about the objectives of the strike? What are they trying to get out of the Iranians by doing that?
Because for an adversary, if you know where the U.S. red line is, if you know the U.S. where they're moving next, then you're going to always be a step ahead and you're going to know, okay, well, I could go this far.
But I don't understand. I think the part I'm not understanding is that we are already bombing them. We are already destroying, we're killing them, we are destroying their munitions, we are destroying their navy. So they're not worried about, we've already crossed the red line threshold here.
And we may have casualties. That often happens in war.
I don't know if this is technically a war.
We didn't start this war, but under President Trump, we are finishing it.
This isn't a war. We haven't declared war.
The Secretary of Defense, who calls himself the Secretary of War, said today this is a war.
We set the terms of this war from start to finish.
Nobody should classify this as war. It is combat operations.
War is hell, and always will be.
Strategic strikes are not war.
I guess the Congress people that you saw in that clip are all convinced that it's not a war, because that would mean that they would have had to have done their job beforehand to authorize this. But it does seem like we're in a war because we're talking 4 to 5 weeks and we took out the leader of a nation.
Yeah, when you're dropping bombs on a country and killing their leader, you are at war. And of course, Iran is hitting back. So obviously we are at war. I mean, there's just so many dumb talking points going around about what's going on there. Clearly we're at war. And one of the troubling things about this conflict, I think, is the fact that President Trump made no effort to explain to Congress or the American people why we're going to war, or to build a case for the war, which was supported by only 20% of the public to begin with. There is no congressional authorization. Now you can argue there have been plenty of uses of force in the past where presidents have used force without congressional authorization. But in this case, there was no time element. There was no imminent threat, as we've established. This is a war of regime change. At least it's sold that way sometimes by the administration. This is the kind of thing where clearly the American people and the American elected representatives should have had a chance to weigh in, and they haven't. Now, all that said, Abby, I would add, that doesn't, even though I think the war was unwarranted, I think it's unauthorized, that doesn't mean it's going to be a disaster. There could still be positive benefits that come out of it. At the very least, I think it will degrade the Iranian threat. At the very least, Iran will emerge much weaker, much less of a menace to its neighbors. That doesn't mean I believe it's going to become a Jeffersonian democracy. I'm not sure that you're going to find an Iranian Delcy Rodriguez, but the Iranian threat will probably be a good deal less after this conflict than before. But nevertheless, I would say after Iraq, we should all be fairly wary of starting preventative wars based on nebulous intelligence with a goal of regime change.
You bring up Iraq, though, but even Iraq, the process was actually dramatically more transparent. President Bush went to the UN in 2002. Congress authorized Bush to use force in October 2002. The president addressed the nation in March 2003 and formed a coalition of the willing of dozens of countries before going into this. Right now, we are in this with Israel. The president has yet to speak to really address the nation on this topic since this war started.
Well, the Gulf states are with us, and we have lots of allies with supportive statements. We are in it militarily with Israel. There are some indications that some of the Gulf states that Iran has been attacking may join in, and so we'll see what happens.
They're defending themselves right now.
Yeah,
but,
and they should.
In terms of the coalition,
but they support what the United States is doing. Is the point? So we're not just here with Israel and without any other political support or rhetorical support. That's number one. Number two, the president did release 2 statements over the weekend. Number 3, the Congress, I think, is going to debate
on social media
and vote. So is that?
Yeah, I mean, is
that a problem?
Look, I think it is a problem that the president hasn't gone, he hasn't given a press conference. He hasn't, he hasn't really laid out fully what the strategy is. He's given probably over a dozen interviews over the last 2 days. Mm-hmm. And he's said contradictory things in almost every single interview. So there is a missing piece. What is contradictory? Contradictory is saying one thing in one interview and another.
No, give me an example. I mean,
he said, we want regime change, we don't want regime change. He said, we know the people that were going to replace the Ayatollah. Then he said, we killed the people who replaced the Ayatollah, so we don't know them. He said, we want the people of Iran to rise up and free themselves and fight the regime. And then he said, we're happy to work with the regime remnants if somebody emerges from the rubble.
He said that this could be over in 2 days, and then the next day he said it would
be over in 2 days.
3 to 4 weeks.
Yes, he literally said every single option.
Here's the point. Here's the point. It's
a total mess.
There's been contradictory statements, not just from the president, but from the Secretary of State, from the Vice President, from the Secretary of Defense about what the objectives really were here and why the American people should support this. And I just would ask, if we are going to be in a 4-week or longer conflict, even if it's 4 days, why not go to the American people and get the vote? If this is popular, if this is supported, get the vote.
Well, look, presidents have to make national security decisions based on what they think is in the best interests of the nation in that moment. And that's what the president has done here. I agree with you that I think the president and the administration do need to lay out for the American people, continue to lay out, are we meeting our objectives? I feel like they're doing that. Look, the clear objectives, and this has been consistent. We're not going to let them have the missiles. We're not going to let them have nuclear weapons. Those are the clear military objectives. We've also sunk some of their Navy, which has also been a trouble there. They've given us trouble and other nations trouble. But the missiles and the nuclear weapons has been a consistent argument of this administration. Now, if taking out this leadership gets to people eventually who would say, okay, we won't do the missiles and we won't do nuclear weapons, that is an amazing outcome, not just for us, but for the entire region. And that's why the region is supporting us.
You know, I was reading some writings from, I think it's a University of Chicago scholar who studies airstrikes. Robert Pape. He teaches to the Air Force about not only the history of airstrikes, but also tactics. And he made a very simple point. There is zero precedent for airstrikes producing political change in the history of this country being a military force around the world. And on top of that, he argues that what it might actually produce instead, what it often produces instead, is actually a more hard-lined nationalist, political force within the country. So as we talk about all of this, I think there are a lot of experts out there who study this stuff pretty closely and work with the United States military who don't see any precedent for saying, oh, they're going to come out of this more moderate than they were before. They're going to abandon their ambitions to strike back against the countries that are attacking them. That seems relevant.
Of course. And you don't have to be a military expert to understand what's going on here. If we couldn't influence the path of a country regime change with hundreds of thousands of troops, we definitely can't do it with zero troops and zero partners on the ground. And we tried this several times in the last 30 or 40 years, and it always failed with hundreds of thousands of people that we put in harm's way. And now we're trying to do it on the cheap with zero people on the ground and zero partners. And of course it's not going to work, and so we're basically breaking it and then just hoping that everything goes well. And again, you don't have to be an expert to understand why that's a very high risk, very low reward type of proposition.
Or at least
and what you're doing is you're plunging this country into a disaster that you have no means and no intention of helping them out of. And all of those possibilities are bad. They could have a civil war. There could be uprisings that get crushed. People talk about the 2002 invasion or 2003 invasion of Iraq. I think it's more akin to the 1991 invasion of Iraq, where we encouraged the Kurds and the Shia to rise up, and then we didn't give them any support, and they got mowed down, and they got crushed. And that's what we're setting the Iranian people up for, and it's not okay. It's not okay for them. It's not okay for us.
Max, you were saying?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I don't think that there is much of a strategy, and you can see President Trump and his senior officials basically throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks, both in terms of a justification for the war as well as an instate for the war. And basically, I think this is the way that President Trump operates. He wants to keep all his options on the table. So whatever happens, he can claim this is the greatest victory of all time, that whatever happens, he'll claim it was part of his plan all along. But it's very unclear right now what is going to happen. I think it's extremely nebulous. And I think, as Josh said earlier, if you don't know exactly what objective you're trying to achieve, how on earth are you going to achieve it?
Can I add something here? The first is that on the communications point, I actually believe it's a deliberate effort to obfuscate on the part of the Trump administration. Yes, there are contradictory statements. That's because they're dealing with an adversary and they know that adversaries are listening very closely. It doesn't work very well in a democracy. I understand that. There's a reason why we have the press holding our government and authority accountable, and I understand that as well. However, when this administration believes that they don't want us to know which way they're going, it doesn't mean that they don't have a plan on the inside. It doesn't mean that they don't know their goals.
That is a bold-faced, crack-a-lucky lie. That is a big, big, fat lie. How do you... Listen, when you guys are speaking, remember you're speaking to the whole world. You're not only speaking to the dumb Americans. You guys cannot tell us that you know where you're going when the officials are giving us contradictory reasons why they attacked Iran. Donald Trump is saying it can take forever. Donald Trump is saying it can take 4 weeks. And Pete Dixon is saying it's not going to take forever. Some are saying the strike is going to be quick and fast and swift. And we are asking the question, just tell us, how long are you going to be killing kids in Iran? Is it going to be for a forever war? Is it going to take 3 months? Is it going to take 2 weeks? How long and how far are you prepared to go? That is the question everybody is asking. And when she sits there with her face like a piece of shit, and she's saying that, oh, they are trying to play a the chess game. That is not, Donald Trump doesn't play. Donald Trump acts on instinct. He only thinks what he thinks by himself that is right. He doesn't believe in intel. All Donald Trump does is what he thinks, his feelings. If his feelings are hurt, he does this thing. If he says something good about Donald Trump, he does the opposite. There is no intelligence. And she sits there and lies to us in our faces. I hope somebody is going to counter what she just said, because this is a bold-faced lie. We should not be believing these people, because these people are full of shit. Seriously.
Means that they don't want you to know where it's going.
But can I ask you, I mean, what would be the point?
I'm skeptical.
Yeah, what would be the, I just, but no, no, but hold on, I just want to understand, what would be the,
around in the dark.
What would be the point?
They have no idea what they're doing. There's no 4D chess.
Hold on,
There's no 4D chess.
let me just ask you a follow-up.
I don't think it's 4D chess.
What would be the point at this stage, we're in the middle of bombing them into smithereens, what would be the point of sending, contradictory messages about the objectives of the strike? What are they trying to get out of the Iranians by doing that?
Because for an adversary, if you know where the U.S. red line is, if you know the U.S. where they're moving next, then you're going to always be a step ahead, and you're going to know, okay, well, I could go this far.
But I don't understand. I think the part I'm not understanding is that we are already bombing them. We are already destroying, we're killing them, we are destroying their munitions, we are destroying their navy. So they're not worried about, we've already crossed the red line threshold here. So I just don't understand what are we trying to get them to, what are we trying to get them to do, I guess is the question.
Well, in general, if you don't know, if they don't know what the U.S. is doing next, or how far the United States is willing to go, then they're going to be on their back heels, right? They don't, and you're already seeing it. Why is it that they targeted the Gulf first? It's because, on one hand, because they're terrorists, and that's a terrorist tactic to pressure the Gulfies, thinking that the U.S. and Israel are going to stop it. It's because they don't want to engage in a direct conflict with the United States and Israel. Because, again, they're not sure how far are we going to go? Trump appears erratic.
Boots on the ground?
Maybe Trump presses the nuclear button.
They sent thousands of missiles into Israel,
and
so I think they did engage.
I think that
are you talking about boots on the ground?
Well, we don't know. That's for an example. Let me give you an example from my. Let me give you an example from. Let me give you an example, Josh, from my time in government when I handled the Syria war, and things were getting worse, and we were getting a lot of pressure, and Obama wanted to go out there and say there's no way we were going to militarily intervene, and I was at the White House saying that was a terrible idea because Assad would hear that and view that as a carte blanche. And what happened? He went out and said we would never militarily intervene. And it was literally the next day there was a marked increase in violence. This is how adversaries work. And I want to just add one quick point on precedent, because one of the fascinating things I see here that the administration is grappling with is that they clearly want to see regime change in Iran, in Venezuela, or transitions of some kind. And they're testing the waters. And there is precedent for transitions to democracy from dictatorship that took a long period of time where you ousted a leader but worked with the regime. And that was what happened in Spain.
As a result of airstrikes?
Well,
There's no precedent for that. There's no precedent for that.
In Spain, the leader was ousted. Economic incentives were given to the
but there's no
was an internal revolution in Spain. That wasn't the U.S. coming in and bombing.
Military action producing that result.
And it took 7 years, but you had this transition to democracy, and you see this happening in Venezuela.
That was an internal process. That's totally different from the U.S. coming in and bombing a country.
But they are studying.
Wouldn't you hope that there is an internal uprising in Iran where the people who everybody admits, have been massacred and suppressed and terrorized and tortured?
I mean,
if they take back their country and it's not hostile to the world,
we're all the guns.
We're the ones with the guns, and we're the ones with the airplanes.
In
and that's
Iran, the
what
IRGC has the guns, and they're arresting and torturing people who
we're bombing the IRGC.
I know, but you can't tell people to rise up and then not support them because you're sending them to the slaughter, and that's a terrible thing to do.
We actually will have an opportunity to continue this conversation a little bit later, but next for us, he promised no new wars, no policing the world. So how does the president reconcile his promises against his actions that he's taking right now? We'll discuss.
Our president will start a war with Iran because he has absolutely no ability to.
This orange man is the only man on this planet who says the things that he was going to do by saying that somebody else is going to do those things. This was him saying that Obama was going to start a war with Iran because his poll numbers were tanking. And guess what? Whose polls number are tanking? And who is trying to bury the Jeffrey Epstein cover-up with striking Iran? So far, nothing is working to bury the Jeffrey Epstein files. Those files will be out. We are going to know if the orange guy did something that we need to know. We are going to get to the bottom of those files. It doesn't matter how many countries is going to bomb. In 1 year, the same peace president, America first president, has bombed 7 different countries. 7 different countries. And people are still wondering, why did he say he's never going to go to heaven? The man knows he's not going to heaven. So he's ready to burn everything down on his way out. He knows where he's going to be after he dies. So he wants to take as many people with him as possible, or even he wants to destroy this world with him. That is his MO. That is what he's trying to do. So people have to wake up. Americans, you guys have to wake up, because this man is going to, shit is going to happen to all of us.
To negotiate. We tried. They wanted to do it. They didn't want to do it. Again, they wanted to do it. They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. This was our last best chance to strike. We more and more are not wanting to be the policemen of the world. An Iranian regime armed with long-range missiles and nuclear weapons would be an intolerable threat. She would get us into World War III. They're drafting you to go and fight in some country that I've never heard. We may have casualties. That often happens in war. Sadly, there will likely be more.
Dr. West, this is a president who has used his opposition to past wars as a political tool, but here he is.
Yeah, I think, again, it's just so sad because, you see, Brother Trump, he is a gangster. And the gangster has a mentality that views himself as never accountable, never vincible, never answerable, and therefore never responsible. So there's a sense in which we shouldn't focus just on him. He's got enablers. He's got supporters. And it's a sign. I'm just thinking we're going to put Brother Jesse in the grave in the next few days, Jesse Jackson. And, Martin and Jesse talked about just how spiritually sick and morally decrepit and politically corrupt the country has become. And it's not a function of skin pigmentation or gender or region. It is a spiritual crisis of tremendous depth where cruelty, manipulation, and transaction is the way to live, and talking about truth and justice and integrity is pushed to the margins. And there's a sense in which when we see this, we have to keep track of that moral and spiritual dimension alongside all of the political debate and partisanship and talking points and so forth and so on. But people know in the barbershops and beauty salons that the country is in deep spiritual crisis. And if we don't talk about it and accent it, and especially to our young people, let them know Martin King and others, Rabbi Heschels and the Edward Zaids and the Dorothy Days, they provide better examples.
Well,
the Justice Harlans
both sides of the political aisle have been exhausted by the United States engaging in conflicts for a while now. And now we're hearing it coming from MAGA. Here is the Blackwater founder, Eric Prince, a major Trump supporter. He's no scaredy cat when it comes to wars. Here's what he's saying about this one.
I'm not happy about the whole thing. I don't think this was in America's interest. It's going to uncork a significant can of worms and chaos and destruction in Iran now. I don't see how this is in keeping with the president's MAGA commitment. I'm disappointed.
And he's not the only one. And, so far, a majority of Republicans support the president, although it's less than support him on a lot of other issues. How long will that continue?
Look, I think vast majority of Republicans support the president's judgment, particularly on Iran. He's always had good instincts on this. He's always been very consistent on this, that he would never allow them to get a nuclear weapon. In fact, while we're on the air, Steve Witkoff is over on Fox News saying the Iranians told him clearly, quote, we have enough material for 11 nuclear bombs, and that is our starting point. Now, if that's what the Iranian negotiators were telling Steve Witkoff, and he calls back to the president and says, They're saying our starting point is we have enough nuclear material for 11 nuclear bombs. Obviously, the president has consistently over the years said, that's not acceptable to me. So, look, he never hid the ball on this. And for the people who are criticizing him over it, honestly, were you not listening to him for years and years and years when he said repeatedly, no nuclear weapons?
I thought that
he was
the point
clear.
was that we destroyed their capability to have nuclear weapons 8 months ago. I mean, it's either one thing or the other.
And they continue to enrich. I think
Okay,
the
but-
point is
but
they
how
kept
is that-
going.
But Scott, how is that possible?
Time
We
doesn't
were
stop.
told
People have
reliably
ambitions.
by the president that their nuclear capabilities were obliterated. That's the word that he used.
No, I mean, I think
and the Iranians said they have all this material.
Look, it's obvious, Abby, that Trump says a lot of things which are contradictory because on the one hand, Scott is right. He has said Iran is not going to go nuclear, but the intro is also correct. It was showing him saying, we're not going to start new wars. We're going to end wars. We're not going to engage in wars of regime change in the Middle East. He said both things. They're contradictory. They don't add up. And basically, any attempt to try to make Trump conform to some doctrine or to impose some kind of consistency or ideology on him is going to fail. He has followers, MAGA followers, who are consistent in their ideology. They want to stay out of these wars. Trump is not. He basically reserves the right to change his mind, 5 times an hour. He says one thing, does another thing. He changes his mind, does something else. And in the case of military action, what I've seen happen is he seems to have become more and more enamored of military action. He saw the success of the Soleimani strike. He saw the success of the June strike on Iran. He saw the success of the operation to seize Maduro in Venezuela. He's now overjoyed. He thinks that the U.S. military cannot be stopped. We're invincible. He can do anything he wants. And my concern is this is leading to the same kind of hubris that led us into the Iraq war, because the U.S. military, while it is very tactically proficient, cannot transform the Middle East. It doesn't have the capacity to transform Iran or any other country. That's what we've discovered over the last 20 years.
You know what this means to all of us? Those terrorist cells that have been dormant around the world are going to wake up. Before we know it, we're going to be yelling of explosions. We're going to be yelling how people are killed in public places. And this is down to this orange man who knows he's going to hell and who is ready to take as many people as possible down that big hellfire. He knows he's going to hell. He said it himself. It's funny when people listen to Donald Trump say the things that he thinks that's going to happen to him. And then people say, no, he's just joking. No, at that age, you don't joke. At that age, you do not joke. For somebody at that age to be saying something like that, know that he's serious. Know that whenever he sleeps, he thinks of the bad things that he's done on people and on this planet. So, do you think America is ever going to bring peace to the Middle East? No. Because guess what? Israel, that controls America, is always going to push America into another conflict. And this is another one. And there are more to come. Anyway, people, let me know what you think in the comment section. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel, come back for another video. This is DB Unfiltered. I'm your uncle from Africa. My name is Dewey Banake. We are just annoyed with this shit. Because this shit is just too much.